Hey Nerf Herders, I'm Addy Thomas.
And I am Ben Milton.
Thanks for joining us for another episode. Certain Point of View news and reviews. We got some news for you guys today. We got a little bit today, and then we're going to also hit up some reviews of this week in Nerd TV. Before we get there, though, just make sure to go to our website, certainpov.com. Check out all of our podcasts there. There are now 4 podcasts that are part of our little podcasting dysfunctional family there. You know, of course, there's Certain Point of View news and reviews. Then we also have Cases Another Pass. We have the Scruffy Nerf Herders, a D20 story, and Fun and Games with Matt and Jeff. Are also now, or the newest edition and the newest member of our family on certainpov.com. Please, again, rate, review, and subscribe to those. And you got some choices for all sorts of nerdy perspectives in different aspects of the nerd world. So you can check out all of that again, certainpov.com. All right, let's get right to the news. So one cool thing that that I just found out recently, especially if you've bought any version of Star Wars The Last Jedi, whether it's digital or you buy the Blu-ray, if you sign up for the Movies Anywhere app, which is a pretty cool service that actually like synchronizes all your movies across all sort of streaming services, so it's nice to have it accessible in lots of different places. You can just buy it once in one spot and it's available in
How much is it?
Others. Movies Anywhere?
Yeah.
It's actually free as far as I know.
Oh, it just comes along with the purchase of the movie.
Well, yeah, of any movie, not just The Last Jedi. But a cool bonus for The Last Jedi is they've added in a score-only version of the movie. So it's sort of like a silent version of the movie where it's just the John Williams score the entire way through. I'm kind of interested to check that out. I'm looking forward to pulling that up and just throwing it on the screen and just kind of enjoying like just the cinematography and the music for it,
right?
Or, you know, and just kind of like, you know, let the plot go for a moment, but just enjoy it in that way.
That does sound cool. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. That I didn't know that was an option. I was just excited to have the movie, so I didn't really pay close attention to like what I was getting with it. All I really wanted was the movie. Right. I was like, oh yeah, like, you know, some sort of, you know, some deleted scenes or whatever, which would be cool or whatever. But I was just excited to have the movie, you know. Yeah,
absolutely. We should probably do a revisit of The Last Jedi, especially after all the special features and everything after that deleted scenes. We should probably do something like that soon.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So,
we should maybe do a commentary track on it.
Right. Yeah, that'd be fun. That would be fun. Sticking with The Last Jedi for a moment, I'm not sure if you've heard this, but apparently Laura Dern couldn't stop saying pew every time she fired her laser pistol in The Last Jedi. And what's actually kind of funny is if you slow down the shot where she like comes out of the fog and takes a shot at like when she's breaking out of being like arrested by Poe and his little coup.
His incursion.
You can see that she says it.
Pew
as well.
pew. I love a good pew pew. Like that's like when we play WoW and I play a hunter. I am often find myself saying pew pew underneath my breath.
So let's move on a little bit more. Still sort of in Star Wars, but this time a slightly different franchise. Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One is coming out real soon. And of course, Spielberg has obtained the rights to lots of different franchises which appear in this particular movie. There's one movie that he wasn't, which is kind of odd considering his best friend formerly owned it, and that is Star Wars. He was not able to get the license to get any Star Wars characters to appear in Ready Player One.
Yeah, I saw some fanboy hate on Kathleen Kennedy over this. This, to me, is such a non-issue. I am so uninvested in this movie. Like, to me, this movie is just like the epitome of fan service. Right. So I have no desire to see this movie. I'm completely uninterested in this movie. Spielberg is a fantastic director, but this to me looks like it's like, hey, I just want to play with my old toys again and do something like from the 80s and pull out all these IPs and stuff like that.
Right.
So the fact that Star Wars isn't there, I mean, I guess is a big deal because Star Wars is such a huge part of 80s pop culture. But but again, I just don't give a shit about this movie at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you there. So, let's move on. Deadpool 2. There's been a little bit of controversy surrounding it. There's been a test screening that happened fairly recently, and there were sort of conflicting reports, and it's possible it was just one troll that said they didn't really like Deadpool 2. But there's been all sorts of back and forth going around this movie. But there is something that some people feel is either brilliant or some people absolutely hate, which sounds very much like in the same vein as The Last Jedi or
The
Iron
Force
Man
Awakens.
3 type of... Right, well...
nerd movie that's put out in the last 3 years.
I don't know if I go that far, because, I mean, Force Awakens was initially very well received, and then there was a lot of backlash much later. Whereas, like, some movies, like, right off the bat, they come off with, like, very divided opinions. Like The Last Jedi, right off the bat, there was very divided opinions. With Iron Man 3, there was very divided opinions. And a lot of people are saying it's very similar to Iron Man 3's Mandarin twist in terms of how controversial it can be. So we'll see. To me, that gets me more excited for Deadpool 2.
Absolutely.
Because I love Iron Man 3, but I know I'm not, like, I know there are a lot of nerds that don't agree with me on that one, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's not my favorite movie. Going back and watching it and doing another pass on it with you and Case, it's not my favorite movie. Like I used to really, really enjoy it, and I've cooled off a little bit on it. I get why there's criticism. I think that you could have just skipped that criticism, or you could skip the whole Mandarin part of that movie, and it would have been fine. I don't mind controversy. I don't mind if somebody takes a shot at a character and reworks him and makes him interesting and surprises us. I mean, if I just wanted a retelling of what's already in the comic books, I'd just go read the comic books. Like, I don't understand, like, that criticism sometimes. People had that with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where it was like, well, that's not exactly how it happened in the books.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, great. It's not exactly how it happened in the books. Like, can we get past that? Like, you've already read the books. Like, if you just wanted to see something and not be surprised or have it retold in a new and interesting way, then, stay home. That's fine. I'm sorry you wasted your $12 or whatever. I think, you can tell the strength of a character or a story when other people can take it and make it their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Batman is the perfect example of that. How many different people have had their take of Batman? A lot, right? Like, so, and some are liked more than others, but it's the strength of that character. So I think it's fine. I'm looking forward to see. Who knows? I may hate it. I may hate what they do, but I'm glad they're taking that risk and trying to surprise us. I think that's good.
Well, speaking of other varieties of our superhero adaptations, we have Teen Titans Go coming up real soon, and there is a surprise I guess it's not a surprise since it's actually a news item.
Since we're talking about it, it's clearly not.
It's been out for a while at this point.
Breaking news, everybody.
Yeah, you'll never get breaking news from us. That being said, we've got someone who... there was a very prolific failure or never making it to the big screen version of Superman. But this time, Nicolas Cage will be playing Superman in Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
Oh,
so
that's going to be fantastic.
Getting the role.
Finally, a Superman I can just kind of go meh to. Let's see how it plays. That is great casting. That's brilliant casting on their part. I mean, that story of that movie not being made is legendary now, with Kevin Smith writing it, and just the whole mythology that goes into how bad that movie was going to be is legendary. I mean, every nerd worth their weight, even if you're not a Superman fan, has probably seen that documentary, and it's fantastic. It's riveting. Like, and then watching Wild Wild West and realizing, oh, they finally did that. This is gonna be cool. This is very cool. I'm glad. And here's the neat thing: if he's successful in this, right? Like, there's a chance that we see him in the larger DC universe at a later date. Like, they have a history of doing this in the DC universe, of taking their voice actors and then giving them something bigger to do as time goes on. So who knows? Maybe we will still see a universe where Nick Cage is playing Superman on the big screen.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Speaking of DC's movies, Ava Duvernay has now been hired to direct a New Gods movie for Warner Brothers. They're doing an adaptation of the Jack Kirby comic, where we kind of learn some of the backstory behind some big characters like the New Gods, including Darkseid himself, and sort of the motivation behind him. So Ava Duvernay is fresh off of Disney's A Wrinkle in Time. So it'll be interesting to see her first foray into superheroes. There was a lot of rumors that she might be taking a run into Star Wars, but that obviously did not happen. But she's making her way over to the DC universe, and we'll see if she can inject some life into this. I think it's an odd property to go to the big screen with.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're willing to go for New Gods, but they're still hesitant about Green Lantern, like, that just feels more insulting to me.
Yeah. DC is such a mess. Like, she's coming off of, like, A Wrinkle in Time is a fairly well received. Like, it was a #1 movie last week or the week ago, or when it first came out, and something like that. It was the first movie to knock off Black Panther, I think.
Yeah, I think it had some critical issues. It wasn't.
It's not the best made movie. It's not the greatest storytelling movie. But that's a really, really difficult story to tell. For a long time, it was thought of as it was impossible to make an adaptation of that story.
Sure.
And she's done it, and she's done it well, and it's fairly well received. Like, is it a perfect movie? No, but people like it, and especially if you're a fan of the books growing up, as you and I know, like, I mean, it fits right in that vein with, like, C.S. Lewis, of, like, it's really heavy on the Christianity without being Christian, so kids like us growing up got fed that book quite a bit. So it has its place. It's an interesting choice. I mean, she's a hot director. She's a good director. She's a woman. She's an African American. Like, all the boxes are checked for Hollywood to really be high on her. Whether or not she can make a good comic book, like, is she even a comic book fan? Do we know?
Yes, she is, and she's a huge nerd, Star Wars fan, Marvel and DC fan.
Okay,
which is why she's also been one of the people that there's been a lot of rumors
about
her.
Which one she's gonna pick. Where does she want to go? It's a bold choice. It's a bold choice. I think I'm more concerned with the choice of story for her than I am with the choice of her. I'm not really concerned at all for her as a director. I'm concerned, it's DC, and they're notorious at this point of just being a clusterfuck for directors. New Gods, really, is that where we're going right out of the gate? Like, it's weird.
I will say it is, as much as, like, I did say it was like it felt a little insulting that they, Green Lantern is still in limbo out there, and New Gods is getting
the green light.
Exactly. I will say that is, I guess it's also a little bit of a director's dream in terms of, well, DC is also taking some hits, so they may be at a place right now where they might give some people a little bit more freedom. That was one of the things that Matthew Vaughn, who had a similar situation with the X-Men franchise and helped inject some new life into it with First Class, and then he was commenting on sort of the same thing with DC and possibly taking a swing at Superman with that. So that might be sort of a motivation there. Not that, like, I mean, Marvel is a great place. I think has gotten a little bit of a rap for being over controlling, but as we can see from some of the more recent movies, they've let some directors really express themselves. Definitely Taika Waititi has got, like, Thor Ragnarok is a Taika Waititi movie mixed with a blockbuster. So I think you have all of, like, I think Marvel is having a little bit better of a rep. Star Wars has not gotten the greatest rep in terms of working with directors right now. I know you're shaking your head, Ben, but I mean, regardless, that is something that I think a director will take into account when, are they how much of their vision are they going to be able to carry in? I mean, let's be honest, directors are just as much egomaniacs as studio execs.
Yeah.
And this is in a highly collaborative medium. If you want a lot more independence, maybe stick with podcasting
or independent film,
Right. And even then, there's even a lot of collaboration in independent film. You can't, yes, the director has a little bit more power with indie movies, but I think, that's a long roundabout way of saying that I think she might, there might be, the appeal with DC might be that there's a little bit more freedom. They're
in a weakened state, so they maybe give her more rope to play with, and
exactly.
Hopefully she won't hang herself with it.
Exactly, yeah. That rope exists just as easily to hang themselves as it does to finally find a new way out of this sort of the doldrums that DC is facing.
Well, I've said it for years, and I said, I'm not the hugest DC fan, but I want a really strong DC film universe to compete with Marvel, so that Marvel has to continuously up its game, and that there is competition in the marketplace. I think that just makes the stories for everybody better. So I hope she's crazy successful. I hope it does $1 billion. I hope it's great. It's not a movie that at this point I'm super excited to hear or see, but we'll see.
So moving on, let's talk about this week in Nerd TV. Let's start off with the DC TV universe. Let's see, what did we have? So we got The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning. There was no Arrow or Supergirl this weekend. Let's start with The Flash. What were your thoughts on this?
This was the one with Run, Iris, Run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is initially I was like, oh, really? They're going to give Iris powers? But as the episode went on, I warmed up to it. At first, I was like, all right, well, everyone's becoming a speedster. Of course, it was just a matter of time for Iris to become a speedster. Maybe even Joe's going to become a speedster at some point. Eventually, Diggle is going to get it over on Arrow,
Everybody just gets infected with the Speed Force. That's going to be
it's
next
Oprah
season.
is the Speed Force on The Flash.
You get the Speed Force, and you get the Speed Force.
Everybody gets the Speed Force.
It does feel like that a little bit. I thought the way they gave it to her was really good. The way that
and then taking
Barry
it away
handled
too.
it was interesting. My favorite thing about this episode, though, is the end. And her saying, "Hey, I need to go back to my roots and being a reporter and blogging about the Flash."
Well, and here's an interesting thing, because we were just talking about that last week.
Yeah.
Where we were like, oh my God, Iris is really it doesn't make sense that she's in the position that she's in. And it's almost like they were listening to us.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're ready for an answer. It's just you need to wait a little longer for it.
Yeah. We're clearly not the only people who felt that way. There's lots of people who felt that way about her character.
Right.
What the fuck is she doing there? This is crazy. Doesn't make any sense. It kind of made sense when Barry was trapped in the Speed Force. But then coming out of that, all right, what the fuck are you doing? You should have a job.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. So I like the fact that they are kind of addressing that and have acknowledged that and are helping her move on from that in what feels like a very organic way. Giving her the powers and giving her that ability, then taking it away from her gives her that opportunity to have that perspective in a good storytelling way, instead of just one episode being you know what, I'm going to go back to blogging, which would have been weird too.
Right.
They actually wrote it out really, really well, and as much of a kind of a throwaway episode as it was a good throwaway episode just for that reason.
I don't know if I call it a throwaway episode, but yeah, I do agree that functionally what it does with those characters was interesting. So I was pretty happy with it by the end of the episode. Halfway through, I was a little eye-rolly and all right, let's move through this, get through the motions of another Flash now. So all right, so then we had Legends of Tomorrow. Oh, Elvis,
Undead Elvis, yes. Well. You know, they
not
can't
every episode's a winner.
Yeah, they can't all be winners. You know.
It was so weird. Like every time they went to the to a music track, and it was like, oh, it's clearly not that guy. Not that like I expected them to have someone else doing an Elvis impression.
And he didn't even look like Elvis.
Yeah,
it was just the fun. Like, I mean, they didn't even try. They didn't even like go to like Vegas or to the down on Rodeo Boulevard or wherever it is in California in LA and like pick up an Elvis guy on the side of the street or something. I mean, those guys are a dime a dozen.
Yeah,
they just got like some guy with dark hair, and they were like, "You're gonna play Elvis."
Right.
I don't want you to do an Elvis impersonation. I don't want you to have any of Elvis's like mannerisms or looks. But we're gonna call you Elvis. It was so bizarre. It was actually kind of distracting of how un-Elvis Elvis was.
Yeah, I thought so too. I did think it was very interesting that essentially that Legends of Tomorrow has basically its own Infinity Stones going on now. Like essentially he has the soul gem in his guitar, which I mean it's almost like what I was implying for Marvel, that the soul gem should be in James Brown's grave. I mean, this is
we find out it's in Elvis's grave, and that he
appropriated.
He culturally appropriated the soul gem. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, not a great episode. It was okay, but not a great episode. That episode,
absolutely.
You know what that episode needed? Damien Dark.
Yeah, and that was the big piece missing from this one. He does bring a lot to that series. So, moving on, we also had a new episode of Black Lightning.
Black Lightning.
There's a lot of build up, a lot of there was a reveal, I guess, but really like some really good stuff like this. I really thought what was interesting was the simulation where Black Lightning and now Thunder were training, and they were kind of talking through the issues of dealing with crowds and civilians and actual criminals versus people that they don't like. It was that's pretty like high end,
pretty heady stuff. Yeah, pretty heady stuff for a comic book TV show. Yeah.
And I appreciated it.
I did too. I appreciate how smart this show is and how it doesn't shy away from topics like that. And it doesn't gloss over it, and it doesn't just give it like Hollywood lip service like I kind of expect it to in a lot of ways. Like I kind of expect them like, oh well, if it's a Nazi, you got to punch him. In the same way that Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow and those shows do and did in their big crossover event. Like there was no nuance. Like it was very like, we're going to make commentary about, today's issues with gay rights and Nazis. And this show is handling race and hatred and bigotry and crime
and sexual orientation
in a very deft, subtle, and smart way. And I really, really appreciate that out of this show a lot, because they could easily dumb it down and make it real paint by the numbers,
very true.
Obvious stuff that honestly isn't helpful at the end of the day to any kind of dialogue, and isn't really what I go to science fiction for, comic books for. I go to science fiction and comic books and fantasy for smarter ways to talk about things without having to actually talk about them. So this series is great. It's so great right now. I kind of hope it ends. Because it's only good. It's only downhill, man.
So other big things, we had sort of developments with the bigger plot as far as sort of like why Gambi is there and who he is. Obviously, there's only so much he's telling Black Lightning at this point, but I mean, and there's plenty to learn about him. But I do like that they're not pulling that taffy too far. That we're not gonna have to wait till the end of the season to find anything about it, but that we did find some detail with that. The one thing that I thought was, I don't know how to process it yet, but of course the other daughter is also developing powers.
Yeah.
This seems like a CW issue where everybody gets powers. Oprah's just handing out powers left and right.
But it's consistent. So. It is consistent with the book, though, with the comics. Yeah. Both daughters have powers in the comic books too. So
that's fair. But do you think they could have waited a little longer so they could really develop what they're working with here, or do you think it made sense to bring the other daughter in already?
I would have liked to have waited a season, but there's really not much left for that daughter to do either. Like,
that's true.
There's not a lot going on for her. So
so we'll see how it pays off.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that they're going to need all their powers to by the end of the season for the big bad fight. So
definitely,
and
this is a family drama in a way that most of the other CW shows are not. So it does make sense for the world that they're building. So it wasn't a bad decision, but we'll see how it pays off. So let's move on. We got some more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We saw some familiar faces. We saw the Von Strucker kid. We're getting a little bit more idea of sort of what's going on. Like, they're sort of building an anti-S.H.I.E.L.D. team right now. Well, what are your thoughts with this new episode?
Interesting direction, clearly wrapping the season up, like bringing all the old familiar friends. Like, I keep expecting Ward to be there at some point. Like, I just somehow they're going to find a way to bring him back before this season is over. I'm positive of it. And I can't wait for it, to be honest with you. I've missed him so much.
Well, we got to see the what was the monster that he turned into that he was mind controlled by.
Yeah,
we did see that in the fear dimension for a half second.
Yeah, but real Ward. We need to get real Ward.
Real Ward.
Yeah.
Do you think but Real Ward is dead?
Real Ward is dead. They'll find a way to bring him back.
That's fair.
We'll find it. They got to bring back Ghost Rider at some point to wrap this season up. And have him, maybe he can be torturing Ward, or Ward is able to get away, or something like that from Ghost Rider or something. They need to bring Ward back. Is all.
Do you think Coulson becomes Ghost Rider long term instead of killing him?
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you easily could, but then that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, that's not who I want as Ghost Rider. Coulson's not really a spirit of vengeance kind of guy.
Right.
That's
fair.
So that's not really who I want as the writer. But they may do it just for the TV show, just to save him so that they can do an extra TV show, an extra season if somehow they get the permission to do so or whatever. But I mean, clearly they're going out on their shield with this season. As far as the episode itself goes, I mean, it was a building episode of all right, we're setting the next pieces in motion. There not a whole lot really happened other than we find out a little bit more about what is that girl's name, Rose or whatever. She's interesting.
Ruby.
Ruby, that's her name. Yeah. Yes, Ruby. She's really interesting. I like her. And the Strucker kid, it's nice to see him back. Having a tie back to Hydra again, it's all just it's weaving the web of all the past seasons and bringing it into the current season and just wrapping up all the stories. So and I'm enjoying the ride. I still don't know where they're going and what they're doing. We're 3/4 of the way through the season and I still don't know what it's about, other than we're wrapping everything up. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
And then to wrap up our TV review section, we had a new episode of The Walking Dead. What did you think about this episode?
This is an episode that actually held my attention for a good part of it. Yeah. The last several episodes I've just been kind of phasing in and out of, and this one I was actually looking at the screen and listening to the dialogue, and I even laughed a couple times.
Yeah,
this one.
I enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
I like the Rick Negan. Even though that fight with all the zombies didn't make a whole lot of sense. That none of them got bit with the amount of zombies that were there. But whatever. We'll give them a little bit of plot armor at this point.
Yeah, the plot armor that Negan has of being able to be covered in guts so often, because he got covered in guts with Father Gabriel, who's now lost vision and crazy sick. Negan's fine. Negan just had all those guts poured on him in the car accident. He's fine.
Right.
No problem. No problem at all. His plot armor for against the zombie guts is amazing. Amazing. I will say this, like I enjoyed the interaction between Rick and Negan in this episode, where really Rick was more Negan than Negan was.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally.
And that was fun to watch Rick go to that place and have that, like Negan going like, "What is wrong with you?" It was
I just wanted to save you.
Yeah, it was such a great line, but it was such a great line of like, dude, like seriously, like when Rick is like, "You're gonna die down here in the dark," and he's like, "What is wrong with you?" It was so funny to me. It was a really well written episode. Like this is maybe my favorite episode of the season thus far, to be honest with you. Yeah, the dynamic of the power play by Mustache, it was obviously coming, and I'm looking forward to him getting his due. And then the big surprise at the end of having Trailer Trash Girl picking up Negan is going to be interesting to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, there's some interesting things that happened in this episode. One there's a very I guess the C plot for this episode with Maggie and the woman from another community.
Yeah,
seems really interesting because it seems like they're planting seeds for a plot point that is currently going on in the comic right now. So it was an interesting thing to go with. This possibility of being able to trust again is sort of a little bit of light that needed to be added to the context of this war, especially if we're expecting to see maybe Negan forgiven, or not totally forgiven, but put in prison and
instead of murdered.
Instead of executed,
ending the cycle of violence.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The other thing that I also am wondering, just a little bit of a theory that, maybe Negan is going to be out of the picture for a little bit, and we see the Saviors go a little bit more brutal without him, with Mustache in charge of things.
It's a great name for him, right?
It is. I don't know why I forgot his name, because I know his name.
I know his name too, but as I was just started talking about it, I was like, and Mustache.
The problem is the only name that keeps on coming to my head right now is Gavin, but I know that's the Savior sales rep for the Kingdom, not for the Hilltop.
Right.
So I don't know why I can't remember this guy's name, but I wonder if Negan's appearance could be the moment that goes, like, maybe they switch things up instead of Rick taking mercy on Negan when he has the upper hand. Maybe, like, we see, like, Negan might be a little bit more affected by the sort of conversation he had with Rick in this episode.
Yeah.
And then maybe, like, what he does with Jadis as well. Like, that he sees that he's not saving people. He sees what Mustache has done and is taking his vision to a much higher extreme, but that was always the extreme that it was going to. Because I thought that was an interesting thing that Rick said. It was like, this is where it was going to go. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Because you even see Negan here sort of bargaining with Rick a little bit, like, I'll let you live, like, we'll only take 25%, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, bygones be bygones.
Because it's interesting because it really does feel like Negan is affected by Carl's death and the speech that Carl gave him from the ramparts of Alexandria. So, I don't know if I necessarily, while Negan's, obviously dabbling with some very dark stuff, there's no way he's a hero by any means. I'd be very interested to see him sort of, like, in the last minute sort of appear. And again, total theory, like, who knows what they actually do. But, let's say the Saviors have the upper hand. He walks in, he takes the Saviors back, and he decides to forgive Rick, or maybe even give himself up, because what he's done is going a whole lot further than he ever wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Because we even saw a little bit of his vulnerability with how attached he is to Lucille in a slightly different way than we have before. Like, Lucille, like, that's always been part of his playfulness, but I have a feeling they might reveal the backstory to Lucille as time goes on. So, and maybe that'll earn sort of that kind of moment for him. I don't know. That's just me kind of spitballing what could happen with the rest of the season, and also sort of make it a little bit different from the comic in terms of the a little bit of a role reversal of who decides what the world who makes the big decision to take the world into a better place.
Yeah, that would be a great twist actually. Is have the saviors have our heroes in a really bad spot, and Negan comes and saves the day, and kind of puts everything back in natural order, and kind of hands the reins over to Rick and says, you know what, you're right. And this is what you and I have to do to work together to kind of rebuild this world. I think that would be really interesting, and I think it actually makes more sense than what happens in the comic books. Yeah. And I think it plays a little bit better in today's political climate also, because this show also tends to be very we're going to make commentary about what's happening today, kind of thing. So I think that can totally work, and that I hope it goes that way. That would be cool. And then I would like to see you as a head writer on that show, since you clearly called it out, because I would like a job. Yeah, that would be good. I also thought Maggie was really interesting in this episode, where you could see her if Michonne hadn't been there, you can easily see Maggie becoming the governor,
right?
In her decision makings, and the way that she was processing everything that had happened, and the way she was treating these newcomers. And if Michonne hadn't been there to kind of talk her off the ledge, you could see where she easily could have gone down that path, which is really interesting, because you never really think of Maggie as being the one who could fall to darkness. She's always been on the side of right and the side of light. I don't ever remember a time in the show where you're God damn, Maggie's going to do something really dark here,
Right.
But these last couple episodes with her interactions with the saviors, and rightfully so after what happened to Glenn, yeah, you can understand why she's doing. Again, I think the writing on this show and the way the characters are reacting to the events that are happening to them is much more interesting and much more thought out and much more real than what happens in the comic books. What happens in the comic books is very comic booky, for lack of a better term. This feels a lot more grounded, a lot more realistic, how people would react. So from that aspect, I have a lot of respect for how this season is going. I'm not loving it, but I haven't stopped watching it either. So yeah, it's got that going for it.
So, well, that about does it for all of our TV reviews and all of our news on Certain Point of View today. Be sure to go to our website, certainpov.com, check out all of our podcasts, check out all of our social media. Let us know what do you think about any of the news that we talked about today, any of the TV shows that we talked about today. All of our social media is on our website, certainpov.com. And until next time, stay scruffy, my nerf herders.